The young and the restless spoilers in the dead of night, when the world around seemed shrouded in silence and secrecy, Phyllis found herself trapped in a meticulously constructed snare, a web spun by a heart full of malice and twisted desire. Every minute that passed in that claustrophobic space was a battle for survival, as Phyllis fought against the overwhelming force of her kidnapper. The sound of her desperate struggles echoed faintly in the darkness, a stark contrast to the cold, calculated determination of the one holding her captive. It wasn't long before the truth began to unravel. The one behind this heinous act was none other than Sally. Once a name that resonated with charm and a seemingly unassuming demeanor, Sally had long harbored a deep-seated grudge against Phyllis, a grudge so potent that it had driven her to orchestrate a scheme of unfathomable cruelty. Sally's motivations were twisted by her obsessive love for Billy, a love that, in its extremity, transformed her into something unrecognizable. In her mind, the eradication of Phyllis was not merely a means to an end but the only path to a life of joy and contentment with Billy, a life she believed she deserved. Sally's carefully laid plan was flawless on paper. Every move had been calculated, every contingency premeditated. Yet, the plan began to unravel when Sharon, a figure from Phyllis's tumultuous past, stumbled upon the unfolding horror. Sharon's discovery was accidental yet fateful. Despite the bitter enmity that had defined her relationship with Sally in recent times, Sharon could not ignore the plight of her old friend. Their shared history was riddled with conflict and betrayal, but deep within Sharon's heart lay the vestiges of compassion that refused to be extinguished. The shock of witnessing Phyllis's abduction ignited an inner resolve in Sharon, a determination to rescue her friend, even if it meant confronting the very person she now considered her enemy. With a courage born from years of internal conflict and personal loss, Sharon plunged into the heart of danger. Navigating a labyrinth of peril, she sought to reclaim Phyllis from the clutches of madness. However, in her haste and overwhelming desire to right the wrong, Sharon underestimated the lengths to which Sally would go. As Sharon advanced, fueled by loyalty and an unyielding moral compass, Sally's mask of civility shattered. In that moment, Sally revealed her true nature, a monstrous visage born of rage and twisted ambition. The confrontation was sudden and brutal. Sally, with a cold glint in her eyes, attacked Sharon without a moment's hesitation. The struggle was fierce, the intensity of their clashing wills reverberating through the darkened corridors where fate had led them. Despite Sharon's valiant efforts, the tide of violence proved insurmountable. Overpowered and caught off guard, Sharon was swiftly subdued by Sally's ruthless onslaught. The air filled with the stench of impending doom as Sally, now completely unmasked in both intent and visage, dragged Sharon into the same nightmare that held Phyllis captive. In that harrowing moment, as Sharon's consciousness began to wane under the weight of her injuries and overwhelming fear, Sally leaned in close. With a voice that dripped with malice and a promise of unspeakable terror, she whispered threats that promised pain and despair beyond measure. The words, though spoken in the darkness, resonated with a clarity that chilled the soul. Sharon, struggling to remain aware, could only wonder at the depths of depravity that had transformed Sally from a woman scorned into a creature of pure malevolence. But what could have driven Sally to such monstrous extremes? The answer lay in a labyrinth of emotions, betrayals, and a love so obsessive that it blurred the lines between passion and madness. Sally had once been a person of hope and dreams, her heart full of aspirations for a better future. However, a series of events, moments of humiliation, betrayal, and heartbreak, had eroded her sense of self. Each slight, each perceived betrayal from those she once trusted, had chipped away at her humanity until nothing remained but a shell filled with a corrosive bitterness. The love for Billy, which at one time had been a beacon of light in her life, turned into an all-consuming inferno. It was this overwhelming need to secure a future with him, a future untainted by the shadow of past grievances, that propelled her to commit an act so heinous. In her distorted mind, eliminating Phyllis was the only way to pave a path toward happiness. The logic that once governed her thoughts had been replaced by a relentless obsession, a drive that could not be halted by reason or morality. Sally's transformation was gradual yet irreversible. Every moment of perceived betrayal became a stepping stone toward her current monstrosity. The kindness and vulnerability she once exhibited were overshadowed by a relentless pursuit of retribution, a pursuit that demanded bloodshed and terror. The act of kidnapping was merely the culmination of years of festering resentment, a final, desperate bid to erase the source of her anguish. In that twisted state, Sally was no longer bound by the rules of society or the limits of decency. Instead, she had embraced a dark persona, a persona that allowed her to rationalize the unspeakable, to view Phyllis not as a friend or foe, but as an obstacle to her own salvation. Meanwhile, Phyllis, caught in the vice of Sally's meticulously orchestrated trap, continued to fight for survival. Each attempt to break free was met with a strength that belied the overwhelming odds stacked against her. Her struggles were not just physical but emblematic of the relentless human spirit, the will to live, to overcome even the darkest of nights. As the seconds turned to minutes and the minutes into what felt like an eternity, Phyllis's determination shone through. Even as Sally's monstrous form loomed over her, every fiber of her being screamed for freedom, for a chance to reclaim the life that had been stolen from her. Yet, as fate would have it, the convergence of these three lives, Phyllis, Sally, and Sharon, was a collision of past and present, love and hate, redemption and damnation. In the eerie silence of that forsaken place, the true nature of their intertwined destinies was laid bare. Sharon's attempt to rescue Phyllis, driven by loyalty and a sense of duty, had inadvertently thrown her into the abyss that Sally had so meticulously created. And as Sally's true self emerged, a self defined by cruelty, despair, and a perverse sense of justice, the stage was set for a confrontation that would forever alter the lives of all involved. In the aftermath of that fateful night, questions would linger in the minds of those who knew the truth. How had love twisted into such a weapon? What chain of events had led Sally to forsake her humanity? And most importantly, could the bonds of friendship and loyalty withstand the crushing weight of betrayal and the darkness that had consumed them all? The story of Phyllis, Sally, and Sharon is a stark reminder that in the world of human emotions, the line between love and hate is perilously thin. It is a tale of shattered bonds and broken dreams, a narrative where the pursuit of happiness can, in its most desperate form, lead to unspeakable acts of violence. And as the shadows continue to loom over their intertwined fates, one can only hope that redemption, however fleeting, might one day find a way to heal the scars left behind by such a tragic descent into darkness. Phyllis's mind was a tumult of emotions as she lay battered and bruised in the dim, cold cell where Sally had imprisoned her. Every muscle in her body ached with exhaustion, yet the beating of her heart was a relentless drum, echoing her defiant spirit. In the midst of the terror, a sliver of unexpected hope emerged. Sharon was on her way. For years, the relationship between Phyllis and Sharon had been a storm of love, betrayal, and deep-seated hatred. Their shared history was as complex as it was painful, marred by conflicts that left scars too deep to ever fully heal. But now, as Sharon risked everything to rescue her, Phyllis felt an unexpected warmth blooming in her chest. It was not a simple forgiveness of past transgressions, but a stirring of something more profound, an acknowledgement that sometimes, even amidst the worst of betrayals, the human spirit could still find solace in solidarity. Phyllis's gratitude was intermingled with a swirl of conflicting emotions. Every instinct screamed to fight back against her captor, Sally, yet here was Sharon, someone who had once been a fierce rival and enemy. In that desperate moment, however, past grievances seemed trivial compared to the immediate need to survive. With every step Sharon took towards her, Phyllis felt a resurgence of hope, as if the dark cloud that had shrouded her life was beginning to dissipate, if only just enough to allow the light of possibility to shine through. But the rescue was not as simple as it appeared. Sharon's valiant effort to save Phyllis was fraught with peril and the weight of their shared history. The scars of past conflicts between them ran deep, and with each passing second, Phyllis wondered if the renewed alliance could truly erase the years of bitter resentment and unforgiving animosity. The question haunted her, could the mutual hatred that had once defined their relationship be washed away by the current tide of crisis and necessity? Or was the darkness too ingrained, destined to persist even in the face of unity? As the tumult unfolded, the looming specter of Sally's deranged actions pressed in on them. "Please, someone stop Sally," Phyllis silently pleaded, her voice a fragile whisper lost in the oppressive gloom. "Do not let love drive you to madness." Those words carried the weight of despair and a longing for sanity, a desperate cry for intervention before Sally's insanity, fueled by her obsessive love for Billy, spiraled further out of control. For Sally, love had become a blinding force, twisting her actions into something unrecognizable and dangerous. The fear that she might completely lose herself in her delusions made Phyllis's situation even more tragic. Unknown to either Phyllis or Sharon, another figure observed the unfolding chaos from the shadows. Billy, once the object of Sally's unwavering affection, had been secretly following her movements. His eyes, filled with a mix of confusion, sorrow, and foreboding, took in every detail. It was no coincidence that Sally frequently vanished into the night. Billy had grown suspicious of her clandestine escapades. Rumors had long circulated that Sally was not acting alone, that she might have an accomplice, a shadowy ally whose identity was shrouded in mystery. In the hushed corridors of whispers and clandestine conversations, it was said that no one person could orchestrate such an intricate and terrifying plan without some form of help. The idea that Sally had a partner in crime added another layer of complexity and danger to the situation. The revelation that Sally might have an accomplice only deepened the stakes. If Sally was not acting solely on her warped emotions but was instead part of a larger, more sinister conspiracy, then the threat to Phyllis, Sharon, and perhaps many others was exponentially greater. In the dim glow of the night, as Billy tracked Sally's every move, the intricate web of deceit and madness began to reveal itself in fragments. Each rumor, each whispered suspicion, wove together to create a tapestry of conspiracy that was as fascinating as it was horrifying. For Phyllis, the notion of escape became intertwined with a need to rebuild, not just her shattered physical self, but also the broken pieces of trust and friendship. The situation demanded that she leave behind the toxic environment that had become synonymous with pain and fear. The alliance with Sharon, though born out of necessity, became the cornerstone of her resolve. Together, they recognized that the only way to defeat the monstrous forces that now loomed over them was to unite. Despite the past, despite the bitterness that had once divided them, the present moment was a clarion call for solidarity. The two women, bound by the shared suffering of betrayal and the desperate need to survive, resolved to join forces and escape the hell that had been imposed upon them. Unity was more than just a strategy, it was a beacon of strength in a world where darkness threatened to consume everything. In their collaboration, Phyllis and Sharon found not only a path to escape but also a means to confront the root of their pain. The hatred that had once defined their relationship began to melt away, replaced by a cautious hope that perhaps, together, they could forge a future free from the shadows of their past. The transformation was not immediate or complete. The scars of betrayal lingered like ghosts in the corners of their minds. Yet, as they prepared to leave the confines of their prison, each step was a testament to the possibility of redemption, the potential for healing even the deepest wounds. Meanwhile, Sally's descent into madness had reached a fever pitch. No longer able to hide behind the veneer of controlled malevolence, she had embraced her role as a harbinger of chaos. Her actions were no longer driven solely by a twisted sense of love, but by an all-consuming desire for retribution, a desire that bordered on the supernatural in its intensity. Sally's transformation into a figure of terror was a tragic metamorphosis, one that left those who once cared for her wondering what had become of the person they had known. The stark contrast between the Sally of the past and the monstrous figure before them was a painful reminder of how love, when corrupted, could become a weapon of unparalleled destruction. As the confrontation between the three women escalated, the stakes grew higher than ever. Phyllis, despite the lingering pain and the uncertainty of whether the mutual hatred between her and Sharon could truly be erased, clung to the hope that together they could find a way out of this nightmare. Her battered body and weary soul longed for freedom, for a chance to leave behind the horrors of the past and step into a future where the echoes of pain could be silenced. Sharon, whose determination to save her old friend was matched only by her own inner demons, fought with every ounce of strength to overcome the physical and emotional obstacles in their path. The air was thick with tension as Billy's silent vigil from the shadows added another layer of intrigue to the unfolding drama. His presence, though unnoticed by the two beleaguered women, was a constant reminder of the intricate ties that bound their lives together. Billy's conflicted feelings towards Sally, an amalgamation of love, pity, and revulsion, fueled his decision to monitor her every move. He was caught in the crossfire of a love gone awry, watching helplessly as Sally's obsession transformed her into something unrecognizable, something dangerous. The revelation that Sally might have an ally only deepened his worry, for it meant that the forces driving her madness were more complex and far-reaching than anyone had dared to imagine. In the final, heart-stopping moments before their planned escape, Phyllis and Sharon exchanged a look of determined solidarity. It was a silent vow, a promise that no matter how tumultuous their past had been, their future would be written together. The decision to leave was not just an act of physical departure but a symbolic rejection of the hatred and betrayal that had once torn them apart. In that shared moment, the old wounds began to heal, replaced by the faint, yet resilient, promise of new beginnings. Unity, they believed, was their greatest strength, a force powerful enough to vanquish even the darkest of foes. The echoes of that night would resonate for years to come, a stark reminder of how far love could fall when twisted by obsession, and how the power of unity could rise from the ashes of betrayal. As Phyllis, Sharon, and even the conflicted Billy embarked on a journey away from the sinister shadows of Sally's making, they carried with them the hope that, one day, the haunting memories of the past would be replaced by a future defined not by fear and hatred, but by forgiveness and strength. In the end, the battle was not just against a deranged captor, but against the very forces that threatened to tear apart the fragile fabric of their lives. And in that struggle, as alliances shifted and emotions ran high, one undeniable truth emerged: sometimes, the only way to defeat the monsters of the past is to embrace the light of unity and the promise of redemption, however faint it may seem. In the midst of chaos and shattered alliances, a new wave of anguish swept through the lives of those caught in the crossfire. The dark night was pierced by Maria's anguished cries, her sobs echoing with the weight of grief and raw determination. Maria's pain was as profound as it was personal. She wept uncontrollably for her mother, who had endured the nightmare of abduction only to be rescued from the clutches of relentless evil. Yet, relief was fleeting. In a cruel twist of fate, her mother now found herself under the imminent threat of another vicious attack. The fragile solace that had come with the rescue was being ripped away by the resurgence of danger, leaving Maria with an unbearable sense of loss and fury. Maria's heart burned with a singular, unyielding resolve: she would find and kill the bastard responsible for her mother's torment. Her tears were not merely those of sorrow, they were the manifestation of a promise, a vow to avenge her mother, no matter the cost. As she navigated the labyrinth of her grief, each sob was a fierce declaration of war against the forces of cruelty. In her eyes, the man behind these heinous acts was more than just an enemy, he was the embodiment of all that was vile in a world that had already taken so much from her. With every heartbeat, her determination grew stronger, a testament to the depths of a daughter's love and her unwillingness to let injustice prevail. Amidst this maelstrom of personal vendettas and familial agony, Nick found himself tormented by worry. Once, his life had been neatly divided between two remarkable women, Phyllis and Sharon, both of whom, despite the end of their marital union, still occupied a sacred space in his heart. Their shared past was a tapestry woven with both love and strife, but Nick's affection and respect for them had never waned. As the danger escalated, Nick's thoughts turned to the well-being of his two ex-wives. Both women, with their strength and resilience, had weathered many storms before, yet this new crisis threatened to push them into uncharted and perilous territories. He was desperate to protect them, to shield them from the tumult that now surged around them. Nick's concern was not born out of romantic nostalgia but of a deep, enduring respect, a recognition that the bonds they once shared could still serve as a foundation of mutual care in the face of impending doom. In a dimly lit room where danger lurked at every turn, Sharon awoke to a surreal and unnerving sight. Her eyes, heavy with the remnants of sleep, fell upon Sally, a figure who had become synonymous with chaos and malevolence. Yet, as Sharon's gaze met Sally's, a moment of clarity broke through the haze of conflict. The battle lines that had been drawn in the past began to blur, and Sharon saw not only an enemy in Sally, but also the tortured soul behind the mask of cruelty. With a steadying breath, Sharon spoke, her voice laced with both authority and compassion. "Sally," she urged, "please, calm down and stop this foolishness before you end up in jail. You still have time to change." Her words were not just a plea for reason, they were an attempt to reach the flicker of humanity that might still reside within Sally. Sharon knew all too well that beneath the layers of twisted ambition and vengeful fury, there might yet be remnants of the person Sally once was, a person capable of redemption if only given a chance. This heartfelt admonition was met with silence and tension. The air in the room seemed to vibrate with the weight of unsaid truths and painful regrets. Sally's eyes darted away, a storm of conflicting emotions swirling within them. Had the path of madness become so inevitable that there was no turning back? Or was there, perhaps, a sliver of hope that she could reclaim her identity before it was lost forever in the abyss of her actions? Sharon's plea was a beacon of possibility. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, the chance for transformation was not entirely extinguished. Elsewhere, the ripple effects of these unfolding events began to converge, drawing together the lives of those who had been forever altered by their tumultuous pasts. Maria's relentless quest for vengeance, Nick's protective instincts over the women he once called his own, and Sharon's desperate bid to steer Sally away from irrevocable ruin were threads in a tapestry of intertwined destinies. Each of these individuals was grappling with their own demons while trying to forge a path through the present danger. Their personal battles, filled with sorrow, regret, and determination, were emblematic of the larger war that raged, a war between the forces of love and hate, sanity and madness. Maria's tear-streaked face was a constant reminder of the high stakes involved. Her inner turmoil was a raw, visceral reaction to the violence and betrayal that had scarred her family. Every tear that fell was a testament to the wounds inflicted by those who had chosen cruelty over compassion. Her determination to seek out the culprit was as much about reclaiming her mother's dignity as it was about restoring a sense of justice in a world that had become all too unjust. Maria's journey was not one of blind revenge, but rather a poignant quest to end a cycle of pain, a cycle that had haunted her family for far too long. Nick's role in this intricate drama was equally crucial. His concern for Phyllis and Sharon went beyond mere obligation. It was an outpouring of genuine care for two women who had once been the pillars of his life. Despite the bitterness that might have lingered from past separations, his heart ached at the thought of seeing either of them suffer. The complex relationship he shared with his ex-wives was a testament to the enduring nature of deep emotional bonds, even when the form of the relationship had changed. Nick's protective nature drove him to reach out, to offer what support he could, and to stand as a silent guardian in the background as the storm raged on. As these personal stories wove together, the overarching narrative of chaos and redemption took on a life of its own. Sharon's call for Sally to rethink her destructive course was not an isolated moment but part of a broader theme, a desperate attempt to pull a falling soul back from the brink. In urging Sally to calm down, Sharon was also appealing to the latent humanity that might still be salvageable. Her words carried the weight of someone who had experienced pain and loss, and who knew all too well the fine line between love and hatred. Sharon's plea was both a warning and a lifeline. It was a reminder that actions have consequences, and that the path of no return was littered with irrevocable losses. Sally's reaction, or lack thereof, to Sharon's admonition left many questions hanging in the air. Was she capable of change? Could the darkness that had engulfed her be dispelled by a moment of clarity, or was it too deeply ingrained, a permanent scar on her soul? The uncertainty of Sally's future was a source of intense tension, a tension that threatened to explode into further violence if left unchecked. The possibility that she might have an accomplice, someone who bolstered her deranged plans, added another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. Rumors had long swirled that Sally was not acting in isolation, that a shadowy figure might be guiding her actions. This notion only deepened the mystery and the danger, casting a long shadow over every decision made by those caught in this unfolding drama. Yet, amid the uncertainty and the looming threat of further bloodshed, the bonds of unity began to form in the most unexpected places. Maria's grief and her thirst for justice, Nick's protective concern for the women he once loved, and Sharon's sincere, if strained, attempt to reach out to Sally were all elements of a larger narrative, a narrative that suggested that even in the darkest hours, there was a chance for reconciliation and redemption. The possibility of leaving behind the toxic environment that had defined so many of their recent days was a flicker of hope that refused to be snuffed out. Together, these individuals stood at a crossroads. On one side lay a path drenched in hatred, violence, and irreversible loss, a path that promised only further destruction. On the other lay a precarious but promising route toward healing and transformation, where unity and compassion might eventually conquer the lingering ghosts of betrayal and rage. The journey ahead was fraught with peril, yet each step taken in that uncertain direction was a defiant stand against the tyranny of their pasts. In the final reckoning, the unfolding drama was a stark reminder of the fragile nature of the human spirit. Maria's tears, Nick's unwavering care, and Sharon's earnest appeal to a tormented soul all underscored the profound truth that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, the bonds of love and loyalty could serve as powerful agents of change. The road to redemption was long and treacherous, but as long as there remained a spark of hope, a belief that even the most wounded heart could mend, the fight was worth continuing. The echoes of that turbulent night would resonate for years to come, a poignant chronicle of how personal tragedy and collective resilience could intertwine to forge a path toward a better tomorrow. And as the dawn slowly broke over a horizon filled with both sorrow and promise, those caught in the chaos clung to the belief that through unity, compassion, and the courage to change, even the darkest chapters of their lives could one day give way to a new beginning. A beginning where the monsters of the past were vanquished, and the scars of yesterday healed in the light of hope.